Hello everybody and welcome back to another Which Game is Better video. If you're unfamiliar with this series of mine, basically what I do is take two games from the same series and compare them in three different categories, being story, gameplay, and open world. Within each category there are several points, and whichever game I feel does that particular point better will be awarded with the point, and the game with the most points by the end wins and receives the title of Better Game. In this video we are going to be doing Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag versus Assassin's Creed 3. And just a fair reminder, this video is made up of my opinion, so if you don't agree, that's okay, and feel free to respectfully leave which game you think is better down in the comments. And I absolutely love both of these games, so just because there has to be one winner doesn't mean I hate the losing game or anything. But without further ado, AC4 versus AC3. Starting with the open world category, let's talk about world design. This first point is a fairly easy one for me. Assassin's Creed 3 takes place in colonial America, while Black Flag takes place over many different cities and islands within the Caribbean. Now, as for the big cities in AC4, there is Kingston, Nassau, and Havana, while for AC3 it's mainly Boston, New York, and the Frontier. Boston and New York being the heavily populated areas, while the Frontier is more countryside. I said this in my AC4 review, but I love the world design in Black Flag. The big cities are really well designed for parkour, specifically Havana. It makes traversing not only easy and fluid, but also a lot of fun, and I like the variety and differences between the cities and all the different islands. Obviously, the cities have much better design than some of the basic smaller islands, but it all makes for one good package of an open world. AC3, I'm a little mixed about when it comes to the open worlds. The cities like Boston and New York definitely aren't as well designed for parkour, which is part of the reason why parkour can feel a little less necessary in AC3. The buildings are more spread out, it's hard to go from rooftop to rooftop, and everything in the cities is a little more spread and spaced out. The Frontier is at times a pain to traverse. I do like the focus on tree parkour and all that. It's cool, especially with a big focus on Native Americans, but it doesn't flow very well. Not to mention all the loading screens and barriers between the cities that kind of kills the immersion and that freeing feeling you get with big worlds. I mean, Black Flag has loading screens too, don't get me wrong, but they are far less often. You can travel the big blue sea in your ship, dock at different towns and islands. There's just so much freedom in the exploration and world. Plus, it's very immersive with populated cities and all the NPCs, so personally, I prefer the world design of AC4. In terms of side content, I think AC4 just added a lot more to do. AC3 does have the really fun homestead missions, which I enjoy, and allow you to upgrade the Davenport homestead, but outside of that, there isn't many side quests and activities, or at least not as much when compared to AC4. In AC4, you have the fun black box style assassination contracts. You have forts you can attack with your ship and then infiltrate on land. There's special armor sets with the Templar hunt missions and the Mayan artifacts that give you the Mayan armor. There's Kenway's fleet, naval contracts, warehouses. There's just a lot more to do, and overall it was more enjoyable to explore and do the side content. So once again, the point will go to AC4. Now I wanted to talk about the soundtracks. This is so difficult for me. I love both of the soundtracks from both games. In fact, if there is one thing you can always count on for Assassin's Creed, regardless of the game, it's a good soundtrack. And both of these main themes for these games are so good and so memorable for me. I don't think I can choose one. You know what? Let's just make it a tie and give each game a point. Combat is an interesting one. Both of these games are fundamentally very similar with combat. I enjoy both of them, and I really love the free-flowing combat systems. In fact, this period of AC3, 4, and Rogue has one of my favorite, if not my favorite, combat systems in the series. However, there are some slight odd changes to AC4's. I noticed that AC4's combat doesn't feel as fluid as AC3. The animations are longer and less varied. The weapons aren't as fun to use, like Connor's tomahawk and dagger. And interestingly enough, in AC4, the enemies have automatic health regeneration, while in AC3 they don't. So for example, if you hit an enemy multiple times in AC4 and then stop to counter someone else, or you get hit or something, the enemy you didn't finish off will automatically regain all their health, so you have to go through the whole chain of attacks again. In AC3, you just have to hit them once or twice since they don't regain health, so it doesn't feel as tedious as AC4. I also noticed the double executions are less frequent in AC4. They're a lot more rare and harder to get specifically. I had to go out of my way to get them, and I was only ever getting them when there was 3 enemies fighting me. In AC3, I just got them naturally and pretty frequently, and that was always one of my favorite parts about the combat, are those sweet double executions. So to me, AC3's combat, while similar to AC4, has a lot of little things done better, so point to AC3. Stealth is not a strong suit for either of these games, really. We all know AC3 is more of a combat kind of game than stealth. The missions aren't very well designed for stealth. Your tools, while fun, are quite minimal, and there's obviously no crouch or anything like that. It's sort of the same with AC4, however it has more hiding spots and foliage. You'll notice a lot of the main missions you'll play, there's usually a bunch of bushes, tall grass, or something for you to hide in, which makes stealth easier to pull off and feel more encouraged, as opposed to AC3, where it always felt easier to just run and kill everyone easily in combat. So stealth is definitely going to AC4. Parkour, again, is largely the same between the two games. They work in pretty much the exact same way with a few minor differences. I do prefer the animations in AC3, but 4 still has good looking parkour, but I do also really like the tree parkour from AC3. But then I prefer the world design in AC4 because I think it encourages parkour a lot more. They're so similar, I'm just gonna give another tie here. I mean, sure, there's some little differences, but overall it still feels the same. Naval combat is an easy one. AC3 introduced the system, while Black Flag improved upon it and made it a main gameplay system. More to do with the ship, make upgrades, change the appearance, use Kenway's fleet, attack, loot, and board ships. AC4 added more weapons like mortars, heavy cannons, fire barrels. You can improve your ship's ram. There's just so much more to do with it, and it's fully fleshed out. And while it's still fun in AC3, AC4 took it and improved upon it in seemingly every way. Now, I know some people don't like the naval systems at all, and if that's the case, then you might just prefer AC3 because it has less of it, while in AC4 it's a big part of the game. Fair enough. But since we are comparing, AC4's naval system is much better, so an easy point there.
Truce. Perhaps some time together might do us good. You are my son, after all, and might still be saved from your ignorance. I can kill you now, if you prefer.
That is a relief, sir. Havana is also my destination. Our ways lie together.
Natural allies, then.
You put me at ease, sir. To think I took you for a pirate when you first appeared.
That finally brings us to the story, and let's start by talking about the protagonists. The protagonists of AC3, of course, being Connor Kenway, one of the most badass and deadliest assassins in the series, and for AC4, Connor's grandfather, Edward Kenway, a charming Ezio-like personality who also has a great arc and development throughout the story of Black Flag. It's clear that for Black Flag, they pretty much wanted a character opposite of Connor. I love Connor, a lot of people do, especially now, but back when AC3 first came out, people really didn't like him all that much and weren't a fan of the serious, darker tone. So Black Flag clearly wanted to capture more of the charm, similar to the Ezio games, with a charismatic, funny, yet still layered protagonist and a lighter tone in terms of story that still had deep and emotional impacts, and I think they did a good job. It's so hard for me to choose between these two, but I really enjoyed Edward's journey in AC4. He grows and learns so much throughout the 9 years of the story. He starts out very selfish and greedy, just wanting to be a pirate, always dreaming of the ultimate treasure, and by the end he comes to discover a new treasure. I don't want to talk about it too much, just in case some people who are watching this haven't played the game yet, but it's a great character arc, and that ending hits me in the feels. Again though, Connor is very underrated in my opinion. He too grows a lot. His story is extremely tragic, and you can see him go through numerous struggles during the story, internally and externally. The guy is a beast, and nobody will ever forget that insane E3 trailer where he just demolishes destroys an entire army of redcoats. But if I had to choose between these two characters, which I do, that's sort of the whole point of the video, I'd have to give it to Edward from Black Flag. Now, in terms of antagonists, that's a challenging one to talk about because either game doesn't really have a big standout antagonist. Both of them more or less have multiple antagonists you must go through, and Black Flag being Governor Torres, the Templar Grand Master, as well as his associates like Captain Rogers. The antagonists don't really have much depth, although what's kind of cool about them is they aren't necessarily evil either. They're not just your standard villains. You can see what they want and how they want to help the world. It's of course always about the way they do it though, but even Torres is against things like slavery and wants everybody to have the same rights, even if he still does believe some were born to rule and others to be ruled. Same thing with Rogers. He wants to rid the world of pirates because they're killing people and stealing, and he believes in civilization. Now in AC3, I'd argue the main two antagonists are Charles Lee and Haytham. Charles Lee isn't great, but he does have a personal connection with Connor, as Connor believes he's the one who burned down his village. Even if that confusing plot twist tells us that it wasn't him, Connor's trying to kill him the whole game anyway. But Haytham, on the other hand, son of Edward Kenway, is a completely different story. Haytham is one of my favorite characters in this entire franchise. He's one of the few Templars, maybe aside from Shay, that I can actually understand and agree with sometimes. The way he so elegantly schools Connor and educates him on the harsh truths of the world. Pretty much any scene with Haytham and Connor is the highlight of AC3's story, and giving us the opportunity to actually play as Haytham in the beginning of the game allowed us so much more insight into not only him, but the Templars. In fact, many people may even side with Haytham's version of the Templars over Connor's version of the Assassins. Haytham alone made me question if the Assassins are actually the good guys of this conflict, and maybe the Templars are just misunderstood. And one of his best quotes,
"Freedom is peace."
Oh no. It's an invitation to chaos.
speaks volume to the Templars' beliefs and why they do what they do. It's why they are so insistent on controlling the world's population. So Haytham and Haytham alone is gonna win AC3 this point. As for the plot, AC4 is about Edward Kenway and his life as a pirate as he decides to leave his wife behind, promising her he will return to her in 2 years, an extremely wealthy man. It's about Edward and the pirates, kind of like the outlaws of the Wild West in Red Dead Redemption 2, as there is a community of outlaws that is no longer wanted by society and being hunted down. They just want to live free and unrestricted, not abiding by the government's laws and regulations. So you can see why the pirates and assassins have a decent amount in common, since the assassins wish to safeguard free will. AC3 is about Connor, a half-native, half-British man who wishes to leave his village and be trained in the assassin's ways so he can protect his people. He quickly gets roped into the conflict with the Templars, as he and Achilles strategize on how to take them down and rebuild the Creed. Both have great plots and premises. Again though, I personally enjoyed AC4's more, and it's a unique kind of plot for the series, and it complements Edward's growth and development very well. One of the biggest problems for me in Assassin's Creed 3 was always its pacing. The first like 5 hours of the game are very slow. You start off playing as Haytham, which I actually really enjoyed, but then you have to play hide and seek with Connor as a child, then parkour and hunt as a teen, then go to Achilles' house, then train, then you get it. It's a long time before you're actually thrown into the main point of the game as an assassin hunting Templars. It takes a really long time to establish the characters and get everything set up. Black Flag starts with a bang right away. You're in a storm, in a battle, you kill an assassin, steal their robes, and infiltrate the Templars in Havana to get some coin. The game doesn't hold your hand for as long in the beginning before you're allowed to let loose and explore. Granted, it slows down a bit in the middle act and then picks up drastically at the end, but I definitely feel it's better paced than AC3. That leaves us with a final score of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag 9 and Assassin's Creed 3 4, leaving Black Flag as the winner and the better game. Again, this is all just my opinion, so feel free to leave which game is better in the comments in your opinion and why. And if you're new here and enjoyed this type of video, I make a lot of Assassin's Creed related content. I've made individual reviews for both AC3 and AC4 that I'll leave links for in the description, and I've also made a lot of which game is better videos for other games in the Assassin's Creed series if you'd like to check those out. And there's more on the way, so consider subscribing for more in the future. But other than that, thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day, Assassins.